moments in the world around me and in the world of art, color has given me the keenest joy. To sense the great range and multiplicity of colors has been a source of constant amazement. I consider vision to be my greatest treasure, to be able to focus on the welter of optical signals coming to me from without and to select and make use of what I find to be compatible with my own inner vision and feeling is what I think art is all about.
Surroundings. This environment is so wonderfully creative. May we look at some of the works?
Certainly.
Okay. Let's talk about this one first. This is Shama.
Shama.
And this is unusual because it shows an actual figure. Which you don't do very often. Usually you're
No, I do not. In this case, the materials sort of dictated what I did with them. This was a coarse burlap in the back, and I found this piece under the counter at one of the outlet stores, and it was so African looking. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't resist the temptation to go ahead and produce an African figure, an African shaman.
What are the other materials in this?
Well, it's fabric and yarn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is rather monochromatic for your work.
Yes,
too.
it is. But the materials again dictated what I should do with that. I think to have added a bright color to that would have violated the whole thing.
And where is this piece now?
It's at the Jacksonville Museum of Arts and Sciences.
You know, one of the first things I do when I see a piece of art is look at it as a musician would hear sound and try to translate it into an audio composition by obtaining the rhythms and the colors in a piece. And the rhythms I'm always have liked a lot of Memphis's works for a lot of her very flowing type free lines, sine type wave patterns, and then very hard checks or squares that she interrelates to it. And I try to think of those in compositional terms and try to work them together sound-wise, and some of them are pretty intriguing. I could see the complexity looking at it from, again, as an audio person trying to work with sine-type pattern waves and very horizontal straight lines and trying to put those two elements together. I think she was very successful with that.
Let's look at another one here. Right, this is one that a lot of people in Jacksonville are familiar with because it's at the Unitarian Universalist Church.
Well, it's one of the first very large pieces that I ever made. It's 22 feet high and 6 feet wide, and it presented quite a problem because my room is only 17 feet. So the builders finished the minister's study, which was 22 feet long, and they put horses and a piece of plywood out there. And when I finished the three separate sections, I went out there and put the thing together right on the ground.
There at the church, yes.
Since this was not a Christian church, they do not use the Christian symbols. And I had to think of something that was not related to the Christian religion to use, and so I went back to the traditional symbols of the early artists, the circle and the square, and I played those against each other, letting the circles dominate. The circle has been in art since before the wheel was ever invented. In the rock carvings, in the early days, they used circles over and over again, and that might signify human beings. We're alike, but we're different, each one. Mm-hmm. And then the squares that you can't see too well in this picture, but they are steadying. Too many circles would be cloying, I think. Mm-hmm. This piece is at the St. Paul's by the Sea, the Episcopal Church down there. And since this was a Christian church, I could use the Christian symbols that have been used from time immemorial. The round circle at the top may signify wholeness, and the cross in the center is the Germanic cross, and the three cloverleaf shapes at the top signify the Trinity. Mm-hmm. And then the center part is the tree of life. Here we're all alike, but we're different. Mm-hmm. And since this church is located by the ocean, and the scientists tell us that all life sprang from the ocean to start with, I use the wave pattern at the bottom to signify the. And another reason for doing that was this is the baptismal font.
Oh, I see.
Right by it.
The symbolism, everybody has his or her own opinion, and the artist actually feels that that's good for us to see that. I mean, many of us see the tree of life, and we see the cross as being at the top, as drawing all of the mankind to Christ, and it's then sometimes we'll see that as a gift wrap package at the very top, that the cross is the top of that package, and all kinds of things, but we have fun with that.
And here we have a work that's not a fabric piece, but is a fairly recent work of yours.
Yes, it is. I've never done anything like this before or since. We were building a new sanctuary up at the Presbyterian Church, and since the members of the church are not just overloaded with money, the different members of the church felt that they ought to take over the responsibility of furnishing the interior. And my friend Andy Anderson, who is a house builder, and I said, well, maybe we could come up with the cross. Mm-hmm. And so I designed it with the approval of the architect and the approval of the minister. And Andy had a very fine craftsman on his staff, Billy Johnson. And so Billy Johnson did the woodwork. And then I collected glass from various places. The glass barrel over at Jacksonville University, and one of my friends at St. Augustine gave me some glass from his studio, and another friend sent some from Tennessee, the blue-green glass from Tennessee. The cross is lighted from the back, and it makes it rather spectacular. Oh, yes. I thought before I finished that this is a very conservative community, and I really stuck my neck out to offer to do the cross and to do something as untraditional as that.
What was the congregation's reaction?
They received it very warmly.
Well, it's certainly beautiful. And then the glass came from just pieces of glass that had been discarded?
Chunks of glass that had been discarded.
Oh, I see. And how did you arrange the glass? What was the technique you used to?
Well, I had all the glass on the table, and I just picked and found pieces that fitted
That fit.
certain areas.
It's like putting together a jigsaw
Mhm,
puzzle.
exactly so.
But you were also, did you have any color sense of the way you wanted the color to develop?
Well, we have a brown rug and blue cushions on the pews, and so I wanted to repeat the blues. The glass in the window as a sample of the blue glass that I used in the cross, but then it was too monotonous to have all of it the same color, and I found the reds and the ambers and the greens, and I found that suited me better than just to have all one color.
Do you see any symbolism in having this found glass
No,
to create the
no, I don't think
cross?
so. I just wanted to make something that pleased me,
And was beautiful.
and I hope that the others would be pleased with it.
What is the wood? What kind of wood is it?
This is a veneer called a P-E-L-E, Pele, or Pele, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's exactly the same wood as we made the pews of.
I see.
So we ordered the veneer for the cross. It's lined with copper, and that little border of copper shows up all over the place.
Would you like to do something like this again, or did you just do it because it was a church you were interested in? And
Well, I don't know whether I would want to attempt another one or not.
you feel more
I
comfortable with
wouldn't
fabric
have
work?
as many troubles with the next one as I had with this one.
Could you tell me a little bit about it? Does it have a title?
I call this one Belshazzar's Feast. If you remember your Old Testament narratives about the Babylonians coming up to Jerusalem and stealing all of the temple goblets and plates and so on, and then the king, Belshazzar, had a great feast for his nobles, and I could visualize what the table must have looked like. And as I worked on that colorful center, I thought, now I don't know why that narrative should have come to my mind, but it did, and so I just tagged that one, Belshazzar's Feast.
Well, it's so beautiful and very sensual. All of those very colorful pieces or circular forms look good enough to eat.
Children cannot resist the temptation to touch it.
To touch it. Oh, yes, absolutely. And the colors are so vivid and beautiful and bright. How do you feel about people touching your fabric pieces? Because many of them invite touching.
Well, I don't think it matters about touching that one. I don't think it hurts it at all.
Is it one of your favorites? Is that why you have it here?
Well, it's rather awkward to store for one thing, and so it seemed to fit in that place, and I've left it there for some time.
In deciding what colors to use, to me, I've always thought of you as an absolute genius when it comes to the use of colors, and in deciding, I'm always wondering how you decide what color to put next to what color. Could you give me an idea about how this piece was created, about the thought processes that you went through to?
Well, I had this array of color out on the table, and it was just a very simple matter of selecting things that snuggled up to one another comfortably. And then if I got too much of the warm color, I stuck in some muted greens or grays or the more sober colors. In fact, it enhances the bright colors if they are next to their opposites.
The title of this totem is Beans and Sprouts. Would you tell me a little bit about its conception and how it was the process of creation?
Well, I'm a country girl, and I've planted beans, and I've had the little sprouts come up with the bean on the end of it. And as I was finishing off the top of that, I thought about the natural forms of beans coming up out of the ground. The base of that is a round cardboard tube that I found at a rug place. And since I was into wrapping with jute and one thing and another, I decided to wrap these tubes. And since this was such a tall form there, I needed to break the design on that, and I've had some fake fur in the studio, and I tried that and it seemed to work.
But you didn't know how you were going to finish it until you got to the top.
That's right. I don't like my work to be thought out and planned down to the T beforehand. I like it to be sort of an adventure. And I like to be able to change my mind along the way if I want to. And if it's laid down in black and white, it sort of hinders me, it hampers me.
So it just seems to grow under your hands.
That's right. That makes it keeps me interested.
What gave you the idea to work in this form, in the totem form? Are you interested in ancient totem figures?
Not really. What materials sometimes determine how they're used. And when I saw those great big tubes, I asked myself, what in the world can I do with these tubes? And this is what I came up with.
This is one of your newer pieces in the Barnett Bank building, and I'd like for you to tell me a little bit. It's tubular forms, is it not?
Yes, it is. It's jute wrapped with colored yarn is what it is.
The design or the shape, the bright color shape in this piece, is a little bit of to me it's reminiscent of an egg form of a. Is that what you had in mind?
Well, it is an oval shape. Some of the dark colors penetrate the warm colors in the center, and some of the warm colors are distributed through the edge, but the pattern is very distinctly warm in the center and cool on the edges.
The other work that you've done similar to this is at Regency Properties. It is also the wrapped jute.
The size of that one is 10 feet long and 6 feet high. The difference is the process is the same, but the pattern is entirely different.
When we constructed this building, we originally decided that we wanted an art piece to be on this wall, and made the decision that we wanted a local artist to do that. And in consultation with our development people, in addition to Joni Stein, we decided that Memphis Wood would do the best job for us. We decided that the lobby needed to have the warm feeling that this piece gives us, and we think she has accomplished that with the final work.
We're trying to create the highest quality suburban office space in Jacksonville. So I think you're asking a question that most tenants would ask typically. We're trying to make it look different. We're trying to warm up the lobby, and that was the way to do it. People it just gives a whole different aura to the lobby. That's where we were trying to go, and she helped us get there.
Warren Hendry, the supervising architect, talked to me months ago about it, but there was no definite commitment made at that time. And then they gave Sally Ann Friedmann the commission to collect artwork from mostly local artists or artists in the state for the building. And what she did, she went around and collected these things, and then she made a presentation to the art committee of the telephone building, and they chose something from what she had collected. They are making a sizable investment. I don't know how many
In
pieces
art,
they have, yes.
How did the concept for this piece come about? You said that it was you corrected me when I said shapes, you said it was forms. How does color work, and how do you see color as functioning in your work? I'm asking.
Well, they gave me the colors that they were using. A girl by the name of Janice, who is doing the interior designing, And they brought me these little color samples. And this is what I had to work from. I asked her if she thought I should make the hanging on the sober side, like the one she had chosen for the rug and the other colors, and she said, heavens no, to go a little wild on color, so I proceeded to do that.
Do you prefer to work with wild colors or subdued colors?
I like rich, intense colors, and I never have been a pastel person, and I'm too old to begin.
When you started on this particular piece that you're working on now, this I guess column of color, did you know the color you were going to use next when you began there with that deeper maroon color, or did you just?
Well, I'll tell you, these colors here determine what I'm going to use next here, not this.
I see.
These colors that I have here determine what I'll use next. I don't want too many the same color right together, but neither do I want them too far apart. I don't want too strong a contrast between these warm colors through here. And when I get this many of this together, I move to a higher key there with the mustard yellow. And then I didn't want that in a straight line, so I staggered these mustard colors, staggered these colors here so that they would not be too set in pattern. And the same thing here. This will be against a polished granite wall, and I assume that granite is some tone of gray. So I gathered a great handful of grays. You see, they're not all the same. There are many different grays. And then I felt the need of some other colors. I brought in although this is a dark blue here, I have dark blue. That's a dark blue there and a light blue here, and the greens are here. And I didn't space them rigidly. I just spaced them according to the way I felt they ought to be.
And so the design developed as you went along. It sort of grew.
Like Topsy.
When did you first become interested in art? When was the time that you began to consider yourself an artist?
Well, from the first painting I ever made, I thought, well, I'm a finished artist.
You probably were.
Was so in love with what I had done, I didn't think anything in the world could be finer than what I'd done. But that was way back when I was a senior in high school. But then I had to earn a living, and I couldn't conceive of being able to sell enough art for bread and butter. And you either had to teach or to sell pins in a 10-cent store. And selling pins in a 10-cent store didn't appeal to me exactly. And then I went over to South Carolina to teach 7th grade, and the state required that a certain amount of time be given to art and music. And I had not had any real training in art, but I just worked with the class the best I could. And the other teachers just couldn't imagine taking time to do artwork in class. They hated it. So we had permission from the principal for me to do their artwork, and they would do my math and English and so on. And that seemed to work fine. But I thought, well, if I can do that here, maybe I could get a job somewhere to teach art and not bother with the math and the English. And so I just scattered applications all over the country. And I got the job here in Jacksonville and one in Hickory, North Carolina. And at that time, Florida was a very glamorous place to be. and so I chose to come here. My purpose is not to protest anything. I leave that to others, or to reform anyone, but to provide visual excitement for myself and those able to share my vision. Numbers of people have chided me for not confining my interest to one field. My answer is that I'm primarily a teacher, and in order to meet the needs and interests of young students, it was necessary for me to experience and understand in many areas such as fiber, clay, metal, as well as painting, although painting for many, many years was my primary interest. While measured by the truly great, I've always known my natural endowments of talent was not great. However, instead of waiting for manna to fall from heaven, I've tried to cultivate what I possessed, and with Albert Schweitzer, I consider it a privilege to witness others pasturing freely where I may never roam.
Memphis Wood. A studio looped with huge hanks of wool, of scarlet, jute and velvet and blue, rough braids, swathe, yardage, textures and colors so profuse, who can tell noun from adjective, the process continuous, table, wall, the woven, stitched, tied construct, triumphant but never disowning its origins, scissors opening roads in landscapes of cloth, pilgrim needles zigzagging through gloss and viridian, crimson, cotton, a motet of fabric, a lace forest grown by two hands, one vision.